Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you and your family cruise a little bit smarter. And I'd like to head up north to Seattle and welcome back to the show, Brian and Sam from Seattle. How are you guys doing tonight?
We're doing great.
Yeah, great.
Well, thanks so much for coming back on. And we are going to talk about your guys' just amazing 11-day cruise on the beautiful Disney Fantasy. But before we jump into it, you guys have been down to Galaxy's Edge a couple times down at Disneyland. And I thought we'd talk about that a little bit just to start off with and kind of get your thoughts. So just to jump into it, how many times have you guys been down there?
We've been down twice, and we've been into Galaxy's Edge three times. Yeah.
Okay. And are you guys Star Wars fans? Kind of casual fans?
Casual fans.
Okay.
We're not hardcore. We've seen all the recent movies like in the theaters, but I would not say we're casual. We're hardcore fans. We don't like line up and go the first night or anything like that.
You don't have every character memorized and all the different star systems or anything like that?
No, definitely not. And we're not dressing up when we go see the movies and that sort of a thing. So
but I am excited about, with Disney Plus coming out, I'll be able to catch up on some of those like Star Wars shows that seem interesting.
Like we haven't watched any of like the cartoon series, and both of us are kind of interested in watching a few of those.
I think my youngest son has watched Star Wars Rebels, and that's it. So I'm really excited about The Mandalorian. Have you guys seen any of the scenes from that?
Yeah, I saw a couple of I think through like Facebook, I saw a couple of the, sort of preview promo things, and it looked pretty cool.
Well, and there's a series coming out with Ewan McGregor? I thought I saw at D23.
Yeah, kind of an Obi-Wan Kenobi one, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Which is pretty cool to have him reprising the role for a TV series for Disney Plus, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping that continues. I'm sure they're going to put like a lot of weight behind it to start with, and I hope it just continues. I guess, does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, I could see them sort of being like, okay, now we can move to the lesser known characters, but it'd be cool if they had a show with Poe Dameron too. He was a cool character, so yeah.
Definitely. So what were you guys' overall thoughts? You guys get a chance to get down there. What was your guys' overall thoughts about the land and maybe a little bit about Smuggler's Run with the Millennium Falcon?
Sam loves Smuggler's Run. She thinks it's so we've been in the land 3 times, and we've done Smuggler's Run. We did that the first time we went. We've also
we didn't do it the other 2 times because the lines were quite long.
Our son tolerates going into Galaxy's Edge. We took him on Smuggler's Run one time, and he did not enjoy that ride at all.
He was really scared.
Yeah, he was really, really scared by it. But he does love. So we've built 3 droids in our family now and 2 lightsabers, and we have been into Oga's Cantina twice, which he also is kind of a mixed review. Smuggler's Run was fun. I did not like it as much as Sam did.
Well, I think it depends so I didn't really like it when I was the gunner. So I think, you've got 3 positions you can be. You can be the pilot, the gunner, or the engineer.
Actually, it's 6 because you have left and right side.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have 3 different choices of which position, but there's 6 spots. So there's 2 of each position. The pilot sits in the front, and then the gunner sits behind the pilot, and then the engineer sits behind the gunner. And the pilot has the best view of the screen, the screen, and is controlling your up-down. Well, one pilot's controlling your up-down movement, the other pilot's controlling your side-to-side movement. The gunner, the buttons for the gunner are to the side of the gunner instead of in front of them. And the engineer, same thing. The buttons for the engineer, which is like basically, if a button lights up, you're supposed to press the button, and it's supposed to be you're fixing whatever's wrong with the ship. It's super distracting if you're the engineer or the gunner, because you don't really, like, if you're looking to the side, you're not looking up or forward at the screen. So I think that was poor design on Disney's part. And so those positions, I would say, are really, you don't want to be in either of those positions. But if you're the pilot, it's I think a really cool experience, and it's a cool ride. I would say it's not like hugely better though than like Star Tours. So I feel like it's, for people who love Star Tours, they might actually be a little bit disappointed by Smuggler's Run.
I will say coolest position on the ride is right-hand pilot because
Right-hand
you
pilot.
get to pull the lever to make the jump to light speed.
Yes.
And so like that is cool to be able to do that. But I agree with Sam. I think I heard somebody reviewing it and they gave it like a 6 out of 10 or something, and I was like, yeah, I kind of agree. It's a neat ride, but it's not anything like crazy. Like I didn't think it was anything super inventive. So.
I will say I get a little nauseous on Star Tours. I did not get nauseous on Smuggler's Run, so I give it a plus for that. But I tried the gunner position, and then I tried the right pilot position, and I think for sure pilot position is awesome. I would not do it again, and I would basically ask to be in the pilot position. I would really push.
I think the current highlights of Galaxy's Edge are like the Millennium Falcon is cool, Smuggler's Run is okay, but like the overall theming and immersive nature of the land. And I've heard as between the two, like at Disney World, there is a spot where you can stand and you can kind of see Slinky Dog. And someone was saying, well, if you stand in the same spot in Disneyland, you can see, I think it's not the Matterhorn, it's Big Thunder Mountain. Big Thunder Mountain. But it actually, like, for me, I was looking at pictures of the one at Disney World and the one at Disneyland. I'm like, Big Thunder Mountain kind of blends in with the rest of the scenery at the Disneyland.
Yeah, because the coloring's the same.
Yeah, it looks like another mountain peak or something off in the distance. So I thought the immersion in the land, the theming of the land is much like Cars Land over at California Adventure in terms of its level of immersion. And then I think the things that really shine there right now are kind of the atmosphere, the people walking around, the stormtroopers interacting with people. They're hilarious. And then I think the experiences. So like building a lightsaber, I think is a really cool experience. Making a droid, I think is a pretty cool experience and much more affordable and accessible if you don't want to drop $200 to make a lightsaber. And then Oga's Cantina is really cool with the caveat that I would not take a 5-year-old into Oga's Cantina, not because it's like, adult themed or anything like that, but just because there is like almost no place to sit. And so like our son was like, I don't want to stand here while you guys are, having a drink. Like, what can I do that's fun? Right. Yeah. And so
also I would say in general, the food options in Galaxy's Edge are not good.
Oh,
with
except for
one exception.
The Ronto wrap.
Right. The Ronto wrap. The Ronto wrap, which is like a kind of like a gyro, other people say gyro, but like a gyro sandwich with like a hot dog in it.
So good.
It's actually a really good sandwich, but everything else in Galaxy's Edge food-wise is really weird and some of it kind of gross. Yeah, everything's really fruity. Even every drink in Oga's Cantina is like really fruity and weird,
or has numbing foam, or some like there was some lady who was having some crazy reaction to the numbing foam that was on her drink. And the blue milk and the green milk are interesting, but also super fruity.
Yeah. So I would say that like the food is kind of a disappointment. Atmosphere is cool. The experiences are cool. I like the ride, but if you compare it to like Cars Land, there's literally no contest. Cars Land wins in a landslide.
I don't know about that, but yeah, I think they're on par in terms of their level of immersion and theming. And then I would say what sets it apart though is the cast member interaction in Galaxy's Edge is cool. Above and beyond. Like the first time we went, it was still during preview. The preview was pretty limited in terms of the number of people. It's like we're wandering around and we're looking at stuff, and we wander over to the rebel side of the outpost, and we're kind of looking at the X-Wing and getting our picture taken, and we start to walk back toward the other side of the outpost, and one of the guys who's at the
first order
kiosk.
Side.
Yeah, the first order. So this guy's at a kiosk that's selling like pins and shirts and stuff. And he kind of steps out and he's like, "You're heading into territory that's controlled by the First Order. Beware." Kind of thing.
And also something about like not telling them where the resistance is based. Yeah. The resistance base is or something like that. Yeah.
And I'm like, I've never experienced any level of theming like that
they get really into character, which is, I think, really cool.
I kind of get the sense it's going to be kind of like Avatar Land in the sense that I remember like they had some really different food options when it first started out, and they've since kind of changed that around a little bit. So kind of a work in progress, and kind of seeing what sticks with people and what doesn't. That's kind of what kind of the feel I get from it. Sounds like from a lot of different reviews, and kind of what you guys are saying as well.
So yeah, I like the food in Pandora way better than the food in Star Wars and Galaxy. one other thing that I don't like, that I don't agree with Brian on, the sort of the theming being equivalent to the theming in Cars Land. Because in Cars Land, you look and you feel like literally you're in the movie, like you're in that, the main street of Radiator Springs. And because in Galaxy's Edge, they created this new planet of Batuu instead of doing like Endor or one of the other planets from one of the movies, I actually don't think I think the theming is really good, but I don't think it compares to Cars Land, because you don't have a specific movie or show that you're like, oh, this is where this took place, and so this is what it's supposed to look like. But the Millennium Falcon and the X-Fighter or whatever it's called?
X-Wing.
Those are really cool. Those are really done perfectly. And you get to take your picture in front of them and all of that. So that's a neat experience. I will also say the droids are kind of amazing, not just from the standpoint, I don't think the droid building experience is that amazing, but the droids themselves are really cool. The way they like talk in the land and try to like interact with each other and stuff. So if you're walking around, you can't have your droid rolling around on the floor, but you can put them in the backpack that you can, that they charge you another $50 to purchase. And if you have your droid on, and if you have more than one droid, they will like interact with each other when they're close, or they'll like try and interact with things in the land. And what I mean by that is like beeping and spinning their head around and talking and all that. Yeah, so I just think that part is cool.
Well, perfect. I thought we'd just kind of get a quick overview, since you guys have had a chance to be down there a couple times before we jumped into the actual cruise itself. And before we jump into the cruise itself, why don't we talk, just for those of you who have not heard your last show, how many cruises you guys have been on, and which cruise is this for you guys?
This was cruise number 5, so we are now Gold Castaway Key members.
Congratulations.
Or Castaway Club members, yes.
So, and we've done one cruise out of San Diego that was like the Baja cruise, a 5-night Baja cruise, and that was on the Wonder. Mm-hmm. And then the other cruises that we've done are three Eastern Caribbeans, all on the Fantasy. And then this one obviously was also on the Fantasy. So we've actually done 4 of our 5 cruises have been on the Fantasy.
Well, perfect. And this was an 11-day cruise down to the Southern Caribbean, correct?
Correct. Yes. And this is kind of a unique itinerary that, in fact, the year before they had done a similar itinerary, but it was a 10-night. So it seems like they change it up. The one that's next year is only like a 9-night.
It seems like they kind of go back and forth depending upon what they can fit in on the summertime there. So, well, you guys live in Seattle and you guys head down. You're like us. You got to pack up the wagon and do your Oregon Trail kind of down across the country to Orlando. How do you guys get down there? Where'd you guys stay this time?
There's a great direct Alaska flight between Seattle and Orlando, so we always take the same 2 flights there and back. And this time we stayed at Disney World actually beforehand for one night, and then we stayed at Disney World again on the way back for one night.
Yeah, and we stayed at the Beach Club.
No, we stayed at the Boardwalk.
Sorry, we stayed at the Boardwalk the night before the cruise, and then we stayed at Bay Lake Towers on the night after the cruise.
Okay, and you guys are DVC members. Did you guys use your points this time, or how'd that work?
No, because by the time we bought into DVC, so we bought into DVC this year, and by the time we had bought, actually no, that's not true.
We did it for Bay Lake.
We used DVC points on both ends. Now I think about it, we did use DVC points. I used DVC points to book the Boardwalk, and I used DVC points to book Bay Lake Tower, because with the one night it was easy to find rooms. Yeah, so we did, and it's off season there.
And we booked like way after the 7-night. Or the 7-month window, but because I think Brian's right, because it was only one night on each end, it was pretty easy to get what we wanted.
Yeah, well, I moved our hotel several times, so
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, did you guys? I know that flight gets in about, I think, 4 or so in the afternoon, so it's kind of tough to make it to the parks. What did you guys do, or did you guys have anything planned?
Did we ever?
So maybe I glossed over that too fast, didn't I?
Yeah. So we knew it was Illuminations the last time we would have a chance to see Illuminations at Epcot, and we're also kind of nerdy when it comes to the characters, and so I knew with all the Epcot stuff going on that Baymax was going to be going away, and he's one of my absolute favorite Disney characters, and so I really wanted to meet Baymax, and Sam wanted to meet Vanellope, which is her favorite Disney princess.
Yeah, Ralph and Vanellope, you get to take your picture with the two of them, and they're kind of in the same spot in Epcot.
Yeah, so we got to the boardwalk. Sam's friend who actually went on the cruise with us picked us up at the airport and got us to the boardwalk. And then he
headed home.
He left, but Sam and I went into Epcot because we're now annual pass holders at Disney World. So we went into Epcot and we met some characters. We went on Spaceship Earth because we hadn't been on it in a long time.
Both of us like 20 years.
Met Baymax, met Vanellope. The park was a ghost town. There was like nobody there. And then we had an Illuminations dining package at the Rose and Crown.
Test Track too?
We did that the next day. We did an Illuminations dining package at the Rose and Crown, and then after Illuminations finished up, we walked over to Hollywood Studios and did an after-hours event at Hollywood Studios to ride some of the Toy Story rides. So yeah, we had a jam-packed first day. I think we got back to the boardwalk at like 1 o'clock in the morning or something. So
yeah, it was a late night for sure.
Wow. So and then you guys get up the next day, and it sounds like you went to the park again before you headed out to the port.
Yep.
We went back into
Epcot
to do a
test track.
We had a test track fast pass, and so I hadn't been on test track before, and so I
hadn't been on it since they did the refurbishment years and years ago.
Yeah, so we did that, and then we met up with Sam's friend probably about 10 o'clock or so, and then headed to the port.
So how did you guys get to the port this time? Did your friend take you, or how did you guys make it out there?
So he drove to the port, and so we parked in the garage there for the entire cruise, in the parking garage.
Yeah.
Well, perfect. So you guys get out to Port Canaveral. Obviously, you guys are familiar. You've cruised out of there several times, and you've been on the Fantasy before. Anything stand out as far as embarkation and just getting on the ship, getting back on the Fantasy again?
So the one thing about embarkation that stood out was that, so when we got to the port, we'll have a little bit of a theme here because Sam's friend was like the ultimate line hacker the entire trip. But when we got to the port, because this was an 11-night sailing, it was jam-packed with gold and platinum cruisers. And so normally when you get to Port Canaveral, you kind of have the check-in line that's like Castaway Club members, DVC members, gold cruisers, and then platinum checks in with concierge. Well, there were so many platinum members, they had a special desk set up at Port Canaveral to check in the platinum members. And so our friend took one look at the line,
and it was a long line.
And he's like, well, normally we get to check into the concierge desk, so let's just go there. And so he went over to that desk, and they were like, welcome, and just checked him in. And so
they didn't even blink twice of that.
Yeah, I think we bypassed like 40 people and got checked in, and then right as we finished getting checked in, they were calling the first boarding group. And so we checked in and then walked right onto the ship.
I think it is amazing that he's like one-off. I don't know, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but kind of like the one-off cruises. Like we did when we did the one way between Rome and Barcelona. I mean, it was jam-packed with golds and platinums. I mean, I've never seen so many people like that. And so I think some of these like one-off cruises like this 11-day sailing and some of the, like the Hawaii sailings, I'm sure are going to be the same way. It's just amazing. When you've sailed so many different times to the Bahamas, I think people are really looking and gravitating towards, something different.
Totally.
Well, and it was apparent in our cruise group leading up to the cruise because
the Facebook group.
The Facebook group, because leading up to the check-in window and the ability to book activities, people were like viscerally like freaking out in this Facebook group about their ability to book things. And I'll say it got really kind of interesting because like after the platinum booking window, because Sam's friend was platinum and he was staying in our room, we got to take advantage of the platinum booking window. And so we got to do everything we wanted at the end of the day.
Yeah, we got to book everything.
But after that, even the gold cruisers were struggling to book shore excursions that they wanted or get brunches and stuff. And so when we got on the ship after checking in, the lines at various places were insane with people trying to get their Pala reservations or their Remy reservations
or book different, see if there were open shore excursions, their first preference that they wanted to do. Or like, I think one was like, there was one that had maybe horseback riding and one that had ATVs. It seemed a lot of people in the Facebook group seemed to be interested in that, kind of sold out pretty quickly.
Well, and right before we set sail, too, about a week before we set sail, they also changed one of our ports because we were supposed to go to San Juan, Puerto Rico, and then they announced that we were going to go to St. Thomas instead. And actually,
because of all the protests that were occurring, because of the governor, the protests to try and get the governor to step down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So there were a bunch of people in line. They didn't open up an opportunity to book shore excursions in St. Thomas online. So everyone had, if you wanted to book a shore excursion, you had to do it on the ship when you got on board. And so there was a huge line to do that. That was actually, we did not get off in every port. We stayed on the ship in St. Thomas because we had been so many times. We just decided to, we were either just going to take a cab to Magens Bay Beach or stay on the ship. And we ended up staying on the ship, which turned out to be awesome.
You guys all stayed in the same stateroom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What'd you guys book this time?
We were in an Ocean View stateroom. It was like deck 9 forward on the starboard side. Yeah, it was I think it was our favorite stateroom. It's like one of the last two on the forward side,
right by the laundry room.
Yeah, because it goes back to our. Yeah, it was across from the laundry room, which led to sort of
good and bad.
Well, it led to endless entertainment with the arguments that were going on in the laundry room, but.
There were a lot of people wanting to do laundry on this cruise. I'll just say that.
Man, it was out of hand. We like to book the ocean view rooms, especially in the summer, because it's so hot that we just figure we're not going to use the veranda. And I think I'm sure it's not actually any different in terms of space, but it feels more spacious for some reason.
I think just having the window does. I don't think we would really lean towards an inside stateroom because for us, the window, I think, is really important. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think there's definitely warm weather cruises. We are fine with doing no veranda. If we went to Alaska, obviously we would go for a veranda.
We really like those ocean view staterooms as well. So that's what we've got booked on our next cruise. So
yeah, I like the veranda too. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the verandas are great, but they're obviously more expensive. And if you're not going to use it a lot, it's not worth it. If you're going to use it a lot, it's really worth it.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have been on the Fantasy before, so you're pretty much familiar with the ship and everything else. What were some of the things that you guys were looking forward to doing when you got back on board the ship as far as kind of adult entertainment and just kind of things to fill your days during the sea days?
So we were super excited to just do a bunch of the kind of like adult activities on board because we don't necessarily always do a ton of those when we sail with our son. And so we were looking forward to that. And then I know Sam and her friend were looking forward because it was a longer sailing. They knew that there would be some special entertainment on board. So when we got to the port, her friend was like, "Where is the navigator so I can find out who the entertainment is, the special entertainment is?" And he was super excited because it turned out to be, it was Telly Long.
Yeah, who was Aladdin on Broadway, who's amazing. Mm-hmm. And so he was one of the entertainers. And then Christina Bianco, she's kind of known as like the woman of a thousand voices or whatnot. Or maybe not 1,000 voices. Yeah. She is a singer and actress, but she does vocal impressions of all different singers. And she's really amazing, super talented. And so she was one of the acts. And then another one was the Edge Effect, which is a male a cappella group. And they're based out of Orlando, I think, and they were amazing. And then you had sort of your cruise regulars like the Magic one, which we didn't see the Magic one, but like and then Ricky Kalman, the hypnotist, which I saw the adult version, one of the adult versions of his show. We didn't go see the ventriloquist Taylor Mason.
And then Marcus Monroe.
Marcus Monroe, who has been on your podcast. He was there too. We saw him. So we were looking forward to some of the adult entertainment, some of the main stage shows, doing just even some of the kind of, I don't know, the Art of the Theme Show tour I've been really wanting to do. We hadn't gotten to do it before because the times just never seemed to work out on other cruises. And so we were able to do that on this cruise. And it's a really interesting tour for people who are big Disney fans and want to see a lot of the little hidden details around the ship. It's really fun. And our tour guide, Corey, shout out to Corey, told us that if you do the tour with different tour guides, you'll actually learn different things because there's just so many different facts that they could tell you about the ship that, it's sort of a hour and a half, I think, tour, but there's just a ton they can, kind of pack in different versions of it. So that was great. We did a bunch of different trivias.
We came home with, what was the count?
I don't know. Too many.
Our friend basically knows everything about Disney, and so we would sit there while he won trivia, and he would get medals for all three of us, and so we came home with like 13 first place medals from trivia. It was crazy.
Really, the Disney trivia. We're not the regular trivia is like the music trivia. Well, the Disney music trivia we won, but the other regular.
He won Disney Cruise Line trivia. He won Disney Parks trivia, Disney music trivia, and something else that was Disney related.
Yeah, and we didn't go to all of the trivias, but we did go to several of them. We were looking forward to some of the movies. So we had not yet seen the new live action Aladdin or Lion King. And so we saw both of those on the ship. Lion King was actually the one night in the main theater, in the Walt Disney Theater. Lion King was actually instead of a main stage show, which is Disney seems to do often one night as sort of a bigger movie. We saw Toy Story 4, which we had actually seen at home because our son had wanted to see it. So we saw it again. But yeah, so we were just kind of mostly looking forward to like relaxing, by the pool and grabbing some drinks and going to see the adult entertainment.
I was going to kind of ask you that. Did you find some time to just kind of chill out a little bit, or did you guys feel like you're going from one thing to the next? Because sometimes it's hard to do that. There's so many things that you want to do that it's hard to just, kick back, grab that drink, and just relax by the pool a bit.
I think I went into this thinking it would be like one of the cruises that we went on in the very beginning where we sat by Satellite Falls every day and all this sort of stuff. We never made it to Satellite Falls.
That's true.
We sat by the Quiet Cove pool like twice, maybe. We spent a lot of time in the Cove Cafe and a lot of time at the various bars around the ship. We kind of had this bar circuit that we would do every night, maybe starting at the Skyline and getting drinks and then having dinner and then going up to Meridian and then going to Cove. And, so yeah, it was interesting with this cruise felt a lot more activity driven for me than it has for us in the past. And we actually commented at some point, we got to the end of the cruise and we were like, there were things that we wanted to do that we didn't get to do. And this was an 11-night cruise. Yeah. So like for anyone in a Facebook group that's asking, like, is there really enough to keep us busy on a 7-night cruise?
God,
I'm like,
yes.
you could, we did a ton and we still didn't do everything that we wanted to do. In fact, there was some event that the D20, they had the D23 at sea. We really wanted to do that and we missed it in the Navigator. And so we didn't get to do it. And it wouldn't have mattered anyway, because we were doing something else at the time that it was booked for. So there was just stuff that we wanted to do that we never got to.
It kind of sounds like Kim and Micah, who we had on, they did the 13-night transatlantic cruise and they still felt like they didn't do everything. So yeah. So many things to do. Well, let's go back in just a couple things I just want to touch on quick before we talk about food. But tell me a little bit about like Telly Long. Did you get to see him, do a presentation, I guess, just for adults only? And then did he do several presentations, or how did that work for him?
By the way, he was on the cruise the entire time.
Yes. Okay. So he's actually unique, though, in that way. He was probably I think, the only entertainer who was on the cruise the entire time. So we actually spotted him a few times before then, before his shows, because his shows started kind of middle end of the cruise. Anyway, he did his first show that he did was on the main stage in the Walt Disney Theater. He did the regular family shows. So he did a 6:15 and an 8:30 show for the two different dinner seatings. And that was really singing a bunch of Broadway and Disney Broadway songs for, the family audience.
He did a talk at some point.
And then it was the next day. So that was on Sunday. So it was actually a week into the cruise. And then he did a kind of a question and answer one afternoon that was adults only.
In the tube.
And then he did an adults only show, which was like a half hour, 45-minute show, adults only in the tube, where he sang also really, Broadway kind of songs. It wasn't like it was inappropriate for kids. All of it would have been appropriate for kids. It was not his version of adult show was not really different than his version of family show. He just did more songs, really.
I think that's kind of a cool thing that they do on these longer sailings when they bring, stars like that from Broadway. And I guess we should, I think you said it before, but just in case it was missed, Telly Long is the one that he actually played Aladdin. And I think he still plays Aladdin on Broadway right now.
He left Yeah, he left the show, and he's kind of going around doing different shows, doing touring type stuff. And he has been on Broadway. He was on Broadway before Aladdin. It was not his first Broadway show. I think he said he'd done maybe like 5 Broadway shows, 7 Broadway shows, something like that. But yeah, he's amazingly talented, and I think he was Aladdin for like 2.5 years, but had recently left. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just think it's cool that they bring them on and you kind of get their backstory and kind of hear, their thoughts about performing on Broadway and some of the different shows that they've been on. So it's kind of a neat touch that they do to bring them on board for everybody to kind of, see their stories.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was really cool.
So, and then you guys got a chance to see Marcus Monroe. What did you think of his show?
He's always really fun and hilarious. The one disappointment about it was not about him, but it was the first night of the cruise. It was supposed to be the Fantasy Come True welcome show. And it was, if anyone's been on the Fantasy before, it's kind of the same show. If they do that welcome show, they don't always do it. But it's with the one where the family is going to Disney World for the first time. Or it's kind of a cheesy story, but they have some good music. But it started that show, and then
all of a sudden it was Marcus Monroe doing juggling.
Yeah,
and
it was weird. So it had nothing to do with Marcus. He was wonderful, and it wasn't a disappointment to see him. It was just not advertised correctly, and I'm not sure why that was. I think it might have been, I heard from somebody said in the Facebook group after that it had something to do with a casting change in the Aladdin show the next day. That they needed to rehearse more for the Aladdin show, but I have
who knows? It was awkward. It was weird. They started the regular show, and then all of a sudden it was like Marcus Monroe on stage doing juggling, and everyone was sort of sitting there going, I mean, this is great, but what happened to the show?
What just happened, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not advertised as being Marcus Monroe. It was advertised as being the Fantasy Come True welcome show. He's hilarious and a really, really fun to watch and really good juggler.
Yeah, we really enjoyed his shows, and he's a very personable person. So if anybody's on board, I know he's sailing the Fantasy right now, and he's got several sailings ahead in the Fantasy as well. So if you get a chance to see him, please stop by and say hi to him afterwards. He loves meeting everybody. So
just don't shout at him, "What's my name?"
Yeah, exactly. Did you guys see Aladdin? Did you guys get to actually see the Broadway?
Yes, we saw Aladdin, and because our friend sailing with us was Platinum, we got to do the Platinum Gold reception, which was centered around Aladdin.
So you got to see the Platinum Gold reception was just going. There's so many Platinum Gold Castaway Club members, so it was in the main theater, and they basically showed a scene, and then they showed the behind the scenes of what the scene change looks like, and then a second scene. So it was. Well, it was Prince Ali, basically, that number.
But before that, they had Captain Thord come out with Peter, was our cruise director, and they talked a little bit about the new ships. Like they talked about
that's right.
They were sort of hyping people up on the new ships a little bit. I mean, they didn't reveal any details about anything other than Disney was querying all the captains and cruise directors for input on the design of the new ships and the internal design for the spaces. So people were really excited to sort of hear any mention about the new ships. And then, they had this show where they would run the scene and then they turned the stage mics on so you could hear the stage hands giving the directions to move the scene along. So, it was interesting.
Yeah. But this was also the revamp of the stage show, Aladdin. So for anybody who's cruised before this summer, you saw Aladdin on the Fantasy, but this is actually kind of a refresh to go along, I think, with the new movie. And so there were a couple of changes to, the scenery was a little bit different. There was a little bit of costume differences. I'm trying to remember. I think they did change they changed even the ending a little bit to go align with the new movie. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but so there's a little bit of a difference. I mean, it's still the story of Aladdin. It's not hugely different, but they did tweak it, so it's a little bit more aligned with the new movie.
They were tweaking it while we were on the Fantasy this last March, and so we didn't actually get to see it, so I'm curious to see what it looks like, or curious to get back on board and see what you guys got to see there. So I've seen it on Broadway, and I think it's a really fun show, so... And I'm sure you guys have seen it. You guys saw it in DCA probably too.
We haven't. Okay. We have not seen the Aladdin show at DCA.
Okay, I can't remember when that ended. Maybe it's been a couple of years now since Frozen's been in there, but I digress there a little bit. Well, anything else about some of the activities you guys did on board before we turn to some of the food?
I think we hit everything. I mean, other than the Mickey's birthday party at sea show that we saw, which was on. It wasn't on a sea day. I think it was on St. Thomas
Day. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was the day we were docked in St. Thomas. The birthday party at sea, Mickey's surprise party at sea, I guess is what it's called. So like the night before, we got in our stateroom this like kind of invitation to Mickey's surprise party at sea. Then as we were either preparing to sail away or right at sail away, they kind of did the party. I was really excited for it, and I think it started off really fun. So like they had a bunch of picture backdrops up on the pool deck. It was outside on the pool deck, and they had a bunch of fun picture backdrops with props and stuff, so you could get kind of these fun photos. Made it look like you were at a party with party hats and such. And then we were standing around kind of waiting for the show to start, and we realized, okay, they're circulating around with like Mickey ice cream bars and cinnamon and sugar Mickey pretzels. And so we had some of those, although that turned into a total debacle because people were taking more than one. And so then they started running out. And I think at one point we went into Cabanas because we saw a bunch of people going in there, and we're like, oh, maybe they have more food or something in there for the party. And so we kind of went in, and it was just like a throng of people being told it was going to be like 25 to 30 minutes for their pretzels.
Oh,
basically. So
The Mickey bars were not the issue. It was the pretzels.
It was the pretzels.
Yeah.
And so they did not have enough of those to satisfy the demand. And then the show, I sort of said it was kind of, for me, it was backwards of a surprise party, because I'm like, it's a surprise party. So like really what should happen is Mickey should come out, we should surprise him, and then there's a whole show that happens to celebrate his birthday. But what really happens is Minnie would come out and talk to one of the Fab Five basically about the fact that Mickey's party was coming up. And then they go off, and there'd be some sort of like little game that would get played on the deck or some little show or something. And then she'd come back out and talk to another member of the Fab Five, and they would do this. It
wasn't even her though. No, most of it was just one of the cruise entertainment staff was like the host for most of it.
But the point being that one member of the Fab Five kept coming out on stage, and like an hour after this thing started, Mickey finally shows up for his surprise. So basically we were standing out in 100-degree weather in full sun waiting for Mickey to show up for like an hour. And so it felt like, as compared to like the sail away where it's like, 20 or 30 minutes of show, this felt like it kind of drug on quite a bit.
And there wasn't really much to watch. It was really like but I felt so bad for her. One of the entertainment cast members like kind of trying to get everybody to like dance and stuff, and it just was not working so well because there weren't all the characters out there getting you to dance. So it was a little of a weird setup. They did have this one, I forget the name of it, but it was like a jump rope act. There are like 5 people who do jump rope, and they came out at one point, and they were pretty good, but that was kind of that wasn't that entertaining, and that was the highlight, I would say.
Oh, no. So Mickey comes out, boom, it's over, and everybody leaves.
Yeah, the only thing that I thought was cool was, I think it was after Mickey came out, they did a kind of a montage video of people talking about what Mickey meant to them. Mm-hmm. They had gotten video from people on our ship. They had gone around and interviewed people to ask them what Mickey meant to them. And that was really very...
It's kind of touching, actually. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Because you think about sort of being an adult and what sort of Mickey means to you, but what Mickey meant to you as a child, or what Mickey means to your children now, or, something like that. So that was kind of sentimental and sweet. So I thought that was the nicest part of it, but that was all the way at the end. So they could have used that as the build up to saying surprise. But I agree with Brian. I think it should have been, it's just kind of backwards the way they did it. Mm-hmm. But the pretzels were good. So there's that.
Well, let's turn to food a little bit. Now, you guys have been on the Fantasy before, so you've been to all 3 different restaurants. Anything stand out on the restaurants? And did you guys make it to Remy or Palo this time, or what did you guys have planned?
All of the above.
We did everything. we did 2 brunches and 2 dinners. 1 Palo, 1 Remy for each. So on the main dining, I'll say on main dining, it was interesting because we got, on an 11-night cruise, we got a few menus that we hadn't encountered before. So we had the
international menu.
We had the international menu. I'm trying to remember what the other ones were. I mean, a lot of them were the standard rotational things. There were a few new dishes, although I'm trying to struggle to remember what exactly they were now.
There was a really awesome rice pudding dessert. I don't remember what night that was, but it was new and it was really, really good.
I felt like we also got the California menu at some point.
Yes, you're right.
From like the coastal sailings, and I think the Alaska sailings, they may have it. And then the international menu was interesting. So yeah, nothing stood. The food was still of great quality in the main dining room, better than most of the other cruise food I've ever encountered. We had kind of an interesting setup because we had requested a particular server in main dining who we'd had on our previous cruise and who we knew was going to be on this cruise. And there was a bit of a snafu on the Disney end in getting us hooked up with that server. And it finally got resolved by we basically would show up to the dining room and they would seat us at a table that was vacant, that was close to his section for the night.
So we did rotational dining.
We were rotating within the rotation. So we were moving tables throughout the dining rooms, basically.
Different table every night. Okay.
Which was kind of interesting. But basically,
we got to know our area. What do they call it? Like the manager,
the area manager,
and the maitre d'.
The maitre d' would spot me a mile away. And I know he thought I was a total pain for getting this particular server. He was probably like, nothing about this server is this amazing, but fine. But we would show up every night and he would have someone come over and ferry our drinks to our table for us and escort Sam by the arm. And, But yeah, we set a different table every night. So that was kind of interesting.
I thought it was fun because you got a different view of the dining room each night, or, even though there's 3 different dining rooms, you get different views each time you're in the different dining rooms. You sit next to different people, it's I thought it was actually a really cool experience, but it's not a normal one.
Yeah.
So Remy and Paolo, any thoughts on that? I know you guys are big Remy fans. Just out of curiosity, anything stand out this time?
For Paolo, they had a new menu that they had just rolled out, as I recall.
For dinner. They had a new dinner menu. So brunch was fabulous, as brunch always is. And if people...
My pro tip for brunch is order the lasagna. If you haven't had the Paolo lasagna, you're not living your best life.
And I will counter that by saying you should also order the chicken parmesan.
Oh, yeah,
and so if you're a couple, you should order the lasagna and the chicken parmesan and then split the two because they're so both amazing.
And finish it off with a sticky bun. Then you're really living your best life. So brunch was fantastic, as it always is. Dinner, they had a new menu. I'm trying to remember what was new. I think they had new appetizers on the menu.
Yeah, there were.
I'm trying to remember what they were. I got to try the sole for the first time, which I know they've had on the menu for a long time, and I loved it. I would definitely get that.
I had the lamb. I had the rack of lamb.
Yeah.
And that was really, I hadn't had the lamb before. I think I had the steak before as my main. We got like 3 different pasta dishes as our pasta course. They normally recommend that you get a pasta kind of to maybe 1 or 2 pastas to share with your mains, but we were like, no, we want to try like 4. No, it was 4 different. We were like,
thank you for your
recommendation.
Thank you for your well-reasoned advice. We are disregarding it and ordering more food than is humanly possible for us to consume.
So we ordered 4 pasta dishes between the 3 of us and had a pasta course before we had our main course.
And it actually was weird because he kept emphasizing like, now if you order 3 pastas, I have to give you a pasta course, and we're like,
yeah, okay.
That's fine. Unless you need the table. It was the first time we didn't get, I don't feel like we got dessert really at Paolo, or we did, but we didn't get the souffles. We were just like, we've had too much food. We can't possibly eat the souffle. But then we hit up I think that was Pirate Night, and we hit up the Pirate Night buffet.
But to be fair, you ate at the Pirate Night buffet. I did not.
They had Mexican food. I'm like, how did they not have Mexican food on the cruise all the time? It's crazy to me. So yeah, but there were some new dishes at Paolo. They had a new menu. I'm just struggling to remember what exactly the new dishes were. Remy for brunch was interesting. They were hyping this special champagne pairing that they were doing only for this longer cruise, that the Ace of Spades champagne, which I frankly was like, I've never heard of this, and I think it's a champagne brand that's owned by Jay-Z maybe, or Kanye. Anyway, Jay-Z. We sat down for brunch and immediately I said, I'm not ordering expensive champagne simply because it's owned by Jay-Z. So we ended up ordering the regular champagne pairing, which we later learned was probably the smart move because the sommelier said that she had gotten sort of very mixed reviews over the champagne from people who had had tried it. But the food was good it was fabulous as always.
There was the red chicken dish.
They had poulet rouge, this dish at brunch that was the most amazing chicken I've ever had in my life. It was like chicken some special chicken from France that they from North Carolina, I think actually, that they had taken and they had stuffed between the skin and the chicken breast with like corn and then roasted it, and so it just tasted like every bite was like chicken with cornbread, and like it was just amazing.
It was so good.
So brunch was fantastic, and then we had dinner there, and I think the most amazing thing about dinner was when we had brunch, we had our server, I don't remember her name. Our friend was saying at brunch how much he was looking forward to coming to dinner because they had this amuse-bouche or appetizer that was basically, the best way I can describe it is like tomato soup that they have put into
like a breaded cube.
And so when you bite into the cube, the soup explodes in your mouth kind of thing. And
it's amazing.
And she broke the news to us that was no longer on the menu, that they had developed they had a new bread service, and that they had just rolled out a new menu in Remy. And our friend was heartbroken. And so when we came back for dinner, she actually someone spilled the beans to us before we came back to dinner, but we came back for dinner. The first course they served us were these like cube. They had basically made these cubes for us special.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were like, that's amazing. And it was delicious. So
yeah.
So I've heard that they have brought on new chefs just recently, and I can't remember exactly when they came on board. So I'm guessing that that's probably part of the change or the impetus behind the menu changing, I think.
At Palo, I think you're right. Remy was the same chef that we had before, but Paulo might have been. It might be that there's a changeover in chefs.
Yeah, I think Remy was like a year ago. They may have redid chefs. I can't remember. And then Paolo was just recently, so interesting. Well, anything else about the food? Anything about Cabanas or anything else you want to touch on before we talk about the ports?
I thought the food was good overall. It was sort of the same old kind of Disney food. And we have a server that we love who always sort of in the main dining room who would
tells us what's good.
He tells it like it is. We just tell him like what is good tonight, and he would just steer us toward like avoid this. I've heard good things about this. So
right.
Yeah.
Or this is looking really dry tonight. Don't order this, that kind of stuff.
And that is some of the best advice you can give, because I've followed our servers the last couple of times, and everything that they've brought out has been excellent. And my wife a couple of times, I don't mean to throw her under the bus, but she picked a couple different things. She's like, you know what? This is a little bit dry. So yeah, that's great advice there. That if you get this, to listen to your servers, they know what's going on down there, don't they?
And if you're really dead set that you want to order the thing, even though your server tells you it might not be a good idea, then listen to your server and order that thing, but also order the entree that they're recommending. And I know that's like food waste, and I know some people are really against it, but
we tried a couple of things, and then we would say, you know what? Pete was spot on. This is terrible, and I don't want to have it.
But then you won't be so disappointed if you order the thing that you like your wife, if you order the thing that you're kind of dead set on, but then you ordered something else, and if that thing turns out to be dry, well, you've got this other thing sitting right here. So
well, let's turn to the ports. You guys have 11 days on board the Fantasy. You take off out of Port Canaveral. Your first 2 days are at sea, and then you arrive at Aruba. Some different ports that aren't normally seen on most of the Disney cruises. What were kind of your thoughts about Aruba, and what did you guys have planned?
So at Aruba, we did what was called it was De Palm Island. It was a beach excursion at De Palm Island, and we pre-booked a cabana, the only place on a Disney cruise we apparently had this way to get a cabana.
Even with a platinum member on board with you guys?
Oh, yeah, no way, not on this cruise.
Cabanas were concierge only this cruise.
Wow. Okay. It's on to Aruba then.
Yeah, and I checked like every day leading up to the cruise just to check. So De Palm Island is you take like a bus ride basically over to the desalination plant for the island, and
they have like one of the biggest desalination plants in the world. It's kind of cool to see from the outside.
But there's this little island, maybe a quarter of a mile off the coast of Aruba that has like what I'll call is a kind of a water park on it. And by water park, I mean they have like some water slides, but this is not Blizzard Beach or whatever it is. This is a very tame water park. It's much more of like a beach excursion than anything. And so
it's kind of like if you think about the pools at the Disneyland Hotel, if you think of the water slides and kind of the splash pad type area, it's actually kind of that.
Yeah, and they do banana boat rides, and they have a zip line that's jet ski, and they have like a zip line that's nothing like any of the sort of major zip lines. It's just more of kind of like a small zip line. But we went and we had a cabana, and basically our cabana had steps right down into the water where we could snorkel or swim, or we could just kind of lay in the shade.
And it's an all-inclusive excursion, so that was one of the things that was really nice. So all your drinks were included, your lunch was included. So you didn't feel like there were, nickel and dimed or anything like that.
And the view was like island gorgeous, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I mean, it was a great day. The temperature was perfect. It was sunny the whole time. It was a really nice beach area, and we got to go to we were one of the first groups onto the island, so we had kind of the water slide area to ourselves for a while. So we just did the water slides for a bit, and so it was really relaxing.
I would also say that just even driving on the bus to where we had to get on the boat to go to De Palm Island, I noticed how nice Aruba was. I had never been to Aruba before, but it was probably of all the ports, like cleanest, nicest island of all the ones that we went to on this cruise.
I think the only tip that we learned to do differently was, so to get back and forth the island, you have to take a little ferry that runs off the island. And at one point we decided, okay, we're kind of done. We're ready to go back to the ship. It looks like there's a bus over in the parking lot. We'll take the ferry over. And so we got the ferry over with like another couple, and we got to the parking lot, got on the bus, and it was like the five of us on the bus, and the bus driver is like, well, I have to wait until I fill up. And so we're just like sitting there for 45 minutes waiting for groups to come over and fill the bus up. And what we should have done, like we had kind of a prearranged departure time, but we figured, well, with the bus sitting over there, we can leave anytime we want, and we should have waited for our departure time and spent a little bit more time on the island. But
yeah,
other than that, it was a fun day.
Yeah, and it was a great excursion. I would definitely recommend De Palm Island.
And I definitely recommend the cabana. It was cheap, and actually, if you showed up day of, I think they still had a couple of them, and you could arrange them directly with them in advance if you wanted. So it was great.
From there, you have another day at sea, and then you hit a couple different islands, and the first one is Barbados. What did you guys have planned there?
We did a Barbados beach break, and I will say, of the excursions we did, I thought this was kind of the weakest one. I mean, you paid basically for a bus ride over to what I'll call a bar that had access to a private beach area, or a beach area that they had staked out. And you only got, I think, like a couple of hours at the beach before they took you back.
You got one drink, you got a chair with an umbrella.
Did you get one drink? I don't think you got one drink.
We got a drink when we came in. It was a rum punch.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So you queued up.
Any free drink is a rum punch in the Caribbean.
That's so true.
Just a pro tip. Yeah. Rum punch. Back to rum punch.
So you got a chair and you got an umbrella and a free drink, and then after that, I mean, the drinks weren't expensive or anything like that, and they had people rotating around to take your drink orders if you wanted.
The beach there.
The beach was gorgeous. The sand was beautiful, but I just wish we'd had, like, if I went back again and I wanted to go to the beach, I would probably just get off the ship and hire a cab to take me to the beach. We also, though, showed up in Barbados on a national holiday. That was the other weird thing. So the ship docked on some sort of holiday, although oddly enough, the post office at the port was open, even though it was a national. We have a tradition of mailing ourselves a postcard from each of the ports that we go to. So when we showed up and it was a national holiday, we were a little worried that we wouldn't be able to find a stamp. So, but anyway, that short excursion was I thought the weakest one of the trip, and it wasn't terrible. It's just we wish we'd had more time at the beach.
Yeah, I would say I didn't think it was weak just because I loved the beach there. It was actually the nicest beach of all of the beaches that we went to. The sand was, that really soft, fine white sand, and the water was completely clear. And so just kind of sitting in the water and looking around. I mean, it wasn't real snorkeling area, so there weren't a lot of fish to see, but it was just gorgeous. And so I wouldn't say it was weak for any of those reasons. It's just that it didn't include a lot, and it was a little bit too short.
So I got kind of an odd question for you guys. You guys have been on a lot of different cruises here recently down around the Caribbean, most of them on board the Fantasy. Most of the excursions you guys have booked have been through Disney, right?
Correct.
All of them.
All of them. So here's my question. are you starting to get maybe, and I'm not sure if this is the right way to say it, but are you starting to get like confident to just kind of maybe start to think that maybe this is something that I want to do on my own? You've been to enough different islands, you've been to maybe some different beaches, and you kind of seen what Disney has to offer. Do you feel like it's now time to just kind of branch out and do a lot of these things on your own rather than kind of relying on an excursion?
I don't know. I think I'm still hesitant to book separate from Disney because I'm afraid of the issue of, if you don't get back in time and you don't.
Sam doesn't want to be a YouTube video of somebody waiting for the port.
Yeah.
So I would say this. I think there are ports where I would. So in St. Thomas, I did not feel any pressure to book a shore excursion because I knew that if we were going to get off the boat in St. Thomas, I was going to get a cab and go to Megan's Bay Beach because it's my favorite beach in the Caribbean. I know exactly what's there, and I know that there's a bunch of cabs waiting to take people back to the port, especially when they know ships are in port. So, and there's a bar there with, that they could call a cab if needed, right? So I think in a port like that where I know I want to go to the beach and I know to get back, I would not hesitate to avoid the Disney excursion, because the Disney excursion, you're basically paying like a 1,000% markup on a cab fare just to stop at an overlook for a picture that you really don't want to take anyway. So something like that, I probably would branch out. I think where I'm still hesitant is like we've done some zip line tours or some, I guess we'll talk in a minute about a catamaran excursion. The catamaran excursion we did, I actually thought like that excursion was well worth the money, and I wouldn't have thought to book it on my own. And knowing that Disney has vetted the vendor means a lot to me, because I know they won't put me on an experience that's, even remotely shaky. If they get complaints from people about a vendor, I guarantee they're just going to cut that vendor and find somebody else to do the shore excursion. So I think for something like going to a beach, I'm much more inclined to just be like, let's find a cab, let's get them to take me to a beach that's good. For some of the other stuff, I would hesitate a little just because of what I'm relying on is Disney to have vetted the vendors properly.
So from Barbados, you guys are on to Martinique, I believe, and I can't remember which one you guys substituted for St. Thomas. Oh, St. Thomas is further on, sorry. So you guys are on to Martinique. What did you guys have planned there?
So we booked a catamaran excursion, and it was one that, so when we researched excursions before the cruise, what I do is I go on and I make a list of things that I think are interesting, and then I have Sam go and look.
And then I get to have veto power.
Yeah, and she gets to veto. Basically, we whittle down the list to the things that we're both willing to or interested in doing, and then we kind of figure out which one we want to do.
And we come up with like a 1, 2, 3 priority.
Yeah, there was a shore excursion in Martinique that was essentially, I sort of never seen a shore excursion that really lasted all day. This was that shore excursion where we basically pulled into port. The shore excursion started 15 minutes after we pulled in, and it was going to drop us back off like 15 minutes before the ship was supposed to leave, or a half hour before the ship was supposed to leave.
And this was like the only shore excursion in Martinique that, from the huge list of excursions, this was the only one that actually like interested us in Martinique.
So initially the shore excursion wasn't offered, and it was like so we signed up for something else. I think Disney got the message from the cruise group and enough people calling in, basically like there are not enough shore excursions. We can't book what we want. They opened up some more excursions, I suspect. But so this shore excursion kind of popped up one day when I was checking the site. It was an all-day catamaran, and what you did was you left, and the first part of it was they went and you did like dolphin sightseeing, which was amazing.
It was incredible.
The number of dolphins that were swimming around was crazy. And there's all these boats that were kind of radioing each other to let them know where the dolphins were. And so
it was like, it must have been a pod of like 100 dolphins all around the boats. And it was just the coolest thing to see them jumping all around. It was amazing. Yeah. I'd never seen anything like it. And we had done the dolphin excursion in Cabo on the Baja
Dolphin
Encounter in Baja, where you actually got to go in the water with dolphins. But this was even more incredible because you're seeing like these 100 dolphins or maybe more just kind of swimming around in their natural environment. It was really amazing to watch.
And I should also say I really liked it because unlike some of the catamaran tours I've been on where they pack the boat full of people, I did not feel like this boat was overpacked. And so
yeah, it was still probably 40 some people, but
it didn't feel
yeah.
And so anyway, the first part of it was you went and saw dolphins. The second part was we stopped at, like, the catamaran pulled into
an area for swimming.
No, the catamaran pulled into port.
That's right.
It pulled into a bay and the North Shore at a little French town in Martinique that was, I mean, this was rustic. This was not tourist. This was like, this is locals. And so we got to use our French skills at the local post office to mail our postcard. And we kind of wandered around, and there were some sights to see, although it was a little difficult to figure out exactly where they were. We ended up stopping in a truly local hole in the wall bar. I ordered what I thought was a beer, and it turned out to be, I guess in the Caribbean, they have this non-alcoholic beer that's really popular. It's like a non-alcoholic malt beer. And so I had this thing, and I'm like, this is like root beer. There's no alcohol in this. And it was really interesting. And I don't think I ever would have discovered it if we hadn't been in this like hole in the wall bar. And then we all kind of got back on the catamaran, and they sailed to a bay, and we got to do some swimming. The current was super strong, and so they ended up having to get a Zodiac out to get a few people out of the water who misjudged their swimming abilities, but got everyone back on the boat safely. And then at this point, they had cooked lunch for us on the boat. And I will say it was one of the most delicious meals we had.
Oh, it was so good.
On the cruise. It was like this
fried mahi-mahi.
Fried mahi-mahi and curried rice. And
spiced chicken. I don't know if it's not a jerk chicken, but like a Caribbean chicken. It was really good. And then they had fruit for dessert. It was really, it was incredible. It was it might have been one of the best meals we had all cruise.
She also put out what I'm going to call it, and no, it wasn't, but I'm going to call she put out an Entenmann's cake, and you're like, oh, it's an Entenmann's cake, right? And then, but she had taken lime and zested it over the top of the cake.
It was a rum cake, yeah.
Yeah, and you ate it, and you're like, this lime zest just totally changes this cake. Like, it's amazing. It
was some kind of syrup, too.
Yeah, but anyway, it was really good. So we had this lunch that had been cooked on board. So they had that. And then after lunch, we sailed to another bay, and we got I want to say an hour's worth of snorkeling time there. And then we headed back to the ship. And it was an amazing excursion. And I will say the weather wasn't even that great that day. It rained a few times. And no one seemed to care, because we were out in the water swimming, or the boat was covered and it was fine. And so it was a great day, even though the weather wasn't that great. So that was a really fun excursion, and one I'd sort of highly recommend. It's an all-day catamaran tour, so it was great.
That's awesome, because so many of the excursions are 4 or 5 hours or something like that with the catamarans. You meant to go to one snorkeling spot, then go to a beach, and then boom, you're back. And to have that whole day like that where you can kind of actually relax and enjoy yourself, that just sounds amazing.
Well, and I thought it was also fun because I felt like we got to know people on the excursion a little bit in a way that you don't always. And so we would see them again around the ship, and we would say hi, and because we were on the excursion together. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really good one.
So from there, you guys are on to St. Kitts. What'd you guys have planned there?
We did a zipline excursion there.
So wait, I should set this up by saying, let's rewind to De Palm Island for a second.
This is embarrassing.
No, this is great. We were going to rewind to De Palm Island for a second, and I mentioned they had a zip line. Well, Sam and her friend and I decided we were going to go on this zip line, and so we went, and I had gotten this 360-degree camera before we left on the cruise, and I wanted to test it out on the zip line before we got to some other places. So I went. Her friend went. Sam got all geared up to go and walked all the way up to the tower and was getting hooked on the line. And then we just see her kind of walking back down the tower and coming back.
Oh no!
And she's super nervous. And I was like, "Honey, we have a major zipline tour coming up in St. Kitts. Are you going to
the rainforest?
Yeah, are you going to be able to do this?" And so we convinced her we need to keep the tour. We're going to do it. So anyway, when we got to St. Kitts, we got on this bus and we drove to...
I have done a really big zip line before.
Okay, she's done this, I think, one of the steepest zip lines in the world.
But I still get terrified to start. That's the problem.
And wait, you got terrified, got to the bottom of that zip line. It was in St. Thomas, I think.
Or St. Martin.
St. Martin. And one of them got to the bottom of the zip line, turned to me and went, "Can we go again?" So anyway, so we drove out to the rainforest canopy for this zipline tour, and
it had rained that morning. Basically, it rained both before and after we ziplined in St. Kitts. But during the zipline, it was one of those canopy ones, so multiple ziplines. we actually did not have any rain while we were ziplining, which was awesome. So we just kind of lucked out perfectly with the weather.
It was 5 zip lines, which included 1 test line. So they have one line where they kind of get you all geared up and they sort of have you try out your harness and, understand how to do the stopping and all of that sort of
what to do with your legs,
what position to stop in, and if you're holding a camera, where to put it, what to do with your legs. So, but then they put you in the back of a pickup truck with all your harnesses and gear
and drive you up like a mountain.
Drive you up a mountain in a ruddy road, bouncing around, and we get to the top.
I went inside the pickup truck, by the way. I did not sit in the bed of the pickup truck.
I've got great video of me bouncing around the back of the pickup truck. But we get up to the top of the mountain. And they're letting people go, and it is like you look at the zip line and you can't see where it ends, and you are sailing across like a huge valley.
Terrifying.
And I will say, Sam was terrified, and the zip line. Let me say, if you're not terrified of heights or whatever it is, this zip line tour was awesome.
This was amazing.
It was amazing. But the thing I will say sent it over the top for me was that Sam was kind of terrified to do the first zip line. I knew if she got over the first one, she'd be like, I love this. Let's keep doing it.
True.
And the guy who was at the top knew that she was not super psyched. And so he was getting her hooked up, and he was just talking to her about, oh, so you did a zip line in St. Martin. What was that like? Oh, was it fun? Did you enjoy it? And then
it's just distracting.
And then and he's in the middle of a sentence and he just says, bye-bye, and like throws the switch, and she goes zooming off, and like 10 seconds later you hear, woohoo! and so he turned to me and he said, I was just trying to distract her. So I thought that was perfect.
All of the people at that zipline excursion were so good. Honestly, they were really funny, but they were also like super professional. Like part of what scared me at De Palm Island was the people there for the zip line. It did not seem super professional. I mean, it was not a very high zip line, and it was not a very long zip line, but it just did not seem to have maybe the safety issues that these other ones, this one at St. Kitts, they were just, I don't remember the name of the company or anything, but they were really amazing. And it's at this, what used to be a big sugar plantation in St. Kitts, because that used to be their biggest industry. Now it's tourism. They were amazing and just such a great excursion. All the zip lines, the 4 real ones, not the training one, were really amazing. Yeah. Amazing views.
Sounds great.
Just great. Yeah.
So the next day you guys are in St. Thomas, you guys stayed on the boat, then you have a day at sea. And I kind of got a question. You guys have been on a bunch of different cruises. So you have sort of 2 days at sea because you guys stay on the boat in St. Thomas. And then you have Castaway Cay, and then you're back at the port. Any thoughts on that? I always want to have Castaway Cay, a day at sea, and then to the port.
Me too.
Yeah, we've yet to be on a cruise where it was Castaway Cay and then a day at sea.
Absolutely, yeah, we've never had that, but that is absolutely, I want that. That's itinerary I want.
Yeah, I mean, on this cruise, I would say, so one, we stay on the boat in St. Thomas, which was absolutely the right call because the sky opened up on St. Thomas while we were there, and you couldn't even be out on deck for a little bit of it. So it was absolutely the right thing to stay.
But there were a lot more people on the ship on St. Thomas Day than on the other port days because of the fact that most of these people are repeat cruisers. And so most of them, or a lot of them, probably the people on the cruise had already been to the Eastern Caribbean, which always goes to St. Thomas.
Well, and a bunch of people came back from shore excursions or from getting off the boat because of just the sky. I mean, it was just
sure, but I mean, a lot of people. I don't think we were unique in deciding to not go to shore at all because we'd been to St. Thomas so many times. I think there were probably a lot of people who decided to not do a shore excursion or to just walk off the boat, do a little shopping, and come back. I think that was pretty typical. And actually, Brian did get off the boat. And that was to mail a postcard. So he just went to the post office and came back. So
I stopped at a couple of stores in the port, but
but that's a good point, Sammy. Out of all the different ports that you guys have been to, most of them are kind of very unique ports that the ships don't stop at usually. But like you said, generally in the Eastern Caribbean, you're going to stop at St. Thomas. So probably the majority of the people have been there before.
So that made the ship a little more crowded on that day, but it was fine because it really was, like Brian said, it was a very bad weather day, and so that was not a bad thing. But it was not a day you could sit out by the pool.
And we had the day. So we had the day at sea. Then we had the Castaway Cay day, and I will say, it ended up working out okay for us on this trip because we got rained out of Castaway Cay. So halfway through, so we got off the boat in the morning for Castaway Cay. My streak of not being able to parasail continues because I signed up for the excursion. They had canceled all the excursions for the day
because of weather.
And they had announced that, there was a weather system in the area and they were monitoring it closely. But, for now, things were fine, right? And we could kind of see like the storm clouds were surrounding Castaway Cay, and we were all making comments like, geez, why can't Disney just build a giant bubble over Castaway Cay? But fine.
Yeah, we went out, we did Pelican Plunge first.
We did Pelican Plunge, then we went over to Serenity Bay, and we sat around Serenity Bay for a couple of hours, and then we got lunch at Serenity Bay, the barbecue. And it was about the time that lunch was wrapping up that we were noticing it seems like the weather is taking a turn. And so we started to walk back toward the boat. And on our way back, the captain made the announcement for people to shelter in place because a thunderstorm was coming. And so we got back to like the main area of the family beach. And at that point, it really started to rain. And so we were huddling into
one of the stores.
I
think it was She Sells Seashells or whatever.
And then the rain let up. We started to go ahead and walk. And then like as we were walking, they made the announcement that people could kind of resume normal activity. We got back to the boat, and I'd say maybe a half hour or an hour later at the most.
Half hour later.
They announced that they were closing Castaway Cay and that everyone needed to return to the ship. And so they came back, the sky opened up. The boat sat there in port, for the full time. So it was sort of this like everyone looking longingly out at Castaway Cay, and we couldn't go. We pulled out at our normal time, but it ended up working out for us because we were back on the boat by like, I want to say 1 o'clock. So we packed kind of mid-afternoon.
Yeah.
And then we ended up, so we were like fully packed before dinner. We ended up carrying our luggage off the boat this time, which was new for us. Yeah, so it ended up working out. It was sort of like having the sea day. But
yeah. Our friend, he always carries his luggage off the ship. And so we were like, okay, I guess we'll try that this time. We'd never done that before. And so we were like, oh, we kind of wanted to see how that went. And it was fine. It was just different experience because you don't have to go find your luggage, obviously, but you have to take the elevators. So that's the only thing. And I don't like having to take the elevators if I can avoid it.
I will never walk my luggage off the boat again unless I'm required to because of an airline flight.
So this is going to be kind of a weird question. You guys have been on the Fantasy so many times. Do you feel like the Fantasy is becoming your ship?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we've got, I'm trying to think. So we've been on the Fantasy and the Wonder. We have...
we're going on the Dream in January.
Yeah, I think you're going to be there.
Oh, yeah, we're going that Run Disney one.
We will be there for Run Disney, or for the Marathon Weekend, but we're not on the ship.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we're doing that cruise that's coupled with Run Disney in January.
So right after
on the
Run
Dream.
Disney weekend.
And then we just booked, in September of next year, we're going to be doing the Northern British Isles cruise out of Dover on the Magic. So we'll finally have our Grand Slam.
So we'll finally get it all four.
Yeah.
Nice. You've had the Grand Slam. Yeah. And I didn't mean that badly, like the Fantasy is your ship or anything like that, but
no,
it's how it feels.
Yeah, I've heard people say before, like, oh, that was the first ship I sailed on, so it just kind of feels like home, and that for me, that's what it is.
Yeah,
like, that was the first ship we sailed on.
I also, because we've been on it so many times, like I know where everything is on the Fantasy.
Except for the laundry room, we didn't pre-plan that.
Well, it was right across from your guys' room, right?
Yeah. It was right across our room. But I feel like I know where everything is on the Fantasy, and even though the Wonder is much smaller, and obviously Magic too, I've only been on the Wonder the one time, and so I still don't. And it was a shorter cruise too. It was a 5-night. So I honestly, if somebody said, walk on the Wonder right now and tell me where something is, I would have no idea. I would have to look at the signs by the stairwells because I really don't know where anything is on that ship. I can't. Whereas on the Fantasy, I could tell you from memory where a lot of things are.
I think a lot of people feel that way. I mean, we feel that way about the Magic just because we've been on the Magic the majority of the time, and we love the time on the Fantasy. Absolutely love it. I can't wait to get back on board her, but I think it's just kind of neat when I think each and every couple, cruiser, whoever family has their favorite ship, and I was just kind of curious what your thoughts were on the Fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, the Fantasy, I would say, is my favorite ship, but I've only been on the Wonder once, so it's really hard to say, and haven't been on the other two ships. So I feel like, though everyone says the Dream is so completely similar to the Fantasy, that we'll feel, just kind of the same way about the Dream, because there's really only a couple of differences.
We actually have 3 cruises booked, but one of them we need to...
Well, they're too conflicting. So we weren't sure. So the one in September of next year is for my 40th birthday. And so we were kind of going back and forth between doing Alaska versus doing the British Isles cruise, but we have settled on the British Isles cruise. So we are going to cancel the Alaska one just because it's literally the exact same week.
Or simply rebook it to something shorter that leaves out of San Diego. I don't know.
I like the way you're thinking, Brian. I like the way you're thinking. Let's take that money and book it onto something else.
Well, can't give up that discount.
I think I would go in the British Isles, with your son being... Would you bring your son, or was it just the two of you?
No, it's going to be the two of us.
That'll be the two of us, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I think I would go to the British Isles just because the weather in Alaska, you guys know that in Seattle, by that time, it starts to get a little bit iffy up there. British Isles is probably going to be a little bit better.
Well, I'm not sure if Sam's looking forward to the cruise as much as she's looking forward to the 3 days we're probably spend in London before the cruise. But we both London's one of our favorite cities to visit. So
yeah. Well, and I also know that we're definitely going to go to Alaska eventually when Nathan's a little older. And so for us, it's like we could go to Alaska now, but we're also going to go to Alaska later. Whereas the British Isles one, I don't know that we'll ever do again. And so it seems like this would be the time to do it.
Well, as we kind of finish up here, Brian and Sam, anything else that you guys want to touch on?
Yeah.
We didn't talk about Christina Bianco.
Let's touch on that real quick.
So the third night of the cruise, we had Christina Bianco was the main stage show in the Walt Disney Theater. And she does all these vocal impersonations. And so she can do Disney characters. She can do Broadway stars. She can do pop singers. She has an amazing voice herself, when she just is singing in sort of her own voice. And she does this really cool rendition of Let It Go. And she changes voices throughout the entire song. And it's really cool. She'll have they have, screens going, and they'll have a picture of whosever voice she's doing while she's singing. And it's really amazing. I mean, she does Idina Menzel. She does Shakira. She does Alanis Morissette. I mean, honestly, she is fantastic. I would definitely say, though, I think her voice is the best. I mean, she is an amazing voice herself, so I liked it when she sung in her own voice. But I think just the talent that it takes to be able to sing in all those different voices is incredible. So I had to comment about her show. I went and saw her main stage show, and then she, of course, did an adult show that I saw as well. I feel like those are the benefits of an 11-night cruise is you do get these acts like Telly Leung and Christina Bianco that don't come on a 7-night cruise. They're not like the Marcus Monroe or the Ricky Kalman or the Justino Magic or Taylor Mason. They're not the regulars on the cruise circuit. And so you only will get them in one of these unique itineraries. The other performers are great, but once you've seen their show, and sometimes they do the same show or they just tweak it a little bit, versus seeing someone with the talent of Christina Bianco or Telly Leung. Those are amazing, and those are not experiences that you can replicate unless you really live in New York City. So I would definitely say those were highlights of the cruise for me.
Once again, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your guys' experiences. You guys sailed down in the Southern Caribbean, and I want to wish you the best of luck as you guys prepare for Marathon Weekend, and look forward to hopefully catching up with you guys down there.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having us again.
When you guys get back, I would love to kind of hear your experiences on the Dream, especially running the race on Castaway Cay as part of the Marathon Weekend as well.
Oh, yeah.
Happy to chat again.
Definitely. So, well, thanks again, Brian and Sam. I appreciate it, and we look forward to chatting with you soon. Well, once again, I'd like to really thank Brian and Sam for coming on and sharing their experiences as they sailed 11 days to the Southern Caribbean on the beautiful Disney Fantasy. They covered a lot of ground, and we sure did the same thing with this show. So as we head into the final weekend for the holiday season, I want to wish you and your families all the best as you finish up that shopping or whatever else you have going on, getting together with friends. And I wish everybody just a happy and joyous time this time of year. If you would like to get a hold of us and be part of our show, you can reach out to myself, Steve, at dclpodcast.com. Once again, that's Steve at dclpodcast.com. Send me an email and we will get you onto the show to talk about your latest Disney cruise or Adventures by Disney experience. If you would like to support the show, you can do so through our Patreon program. Go head over to patreon.com/dclpodcast and you can find out all the information there. So between now and our next show, if you are heading out on your next adventure, all of us here at the DCL Podcast would like to wish you fair winds and safe travels as you head out on your next adventure. Once again, thanks for coming back and taking a listen, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.